Hi folks, and thanks for joining me for this week's river tutorial. What you see in the vise, and continuing on from last week's Mayfly nymph, we have a Mayfly emerger. So without further ado, let's get into it. The hook you see in the vise then is a Hanak H550 barbless hook. This one's at size 10, it's in black nickel and it's on a medium wire. The thread I'm going to be using today is from Veevus. It's the G02. It's a nano silk at 30 denier, and as you can see it's white. As always, first thing I'm going to do is get a dot of super glue onto the shank of the hook. Doesn't need much, just a little bit to help adhere it, and I'm going to use my nano silk to push that up and down the shank. I'll catch just in behind the eye, and I'm going to run a bit of nano silk all the way down the shank and around the bend here. Now it's an unusual hook choice, this, not a dry fly hook, but the reason for that is I need to have the strength in the hook because there is some daft trout about in Mayfly season, and you can end up with something very special on the end of your line, and you're best having a strong hook. Now the first thing I'm going to add is a little bit of glister. This is root beer, and I'm going to take a bit of that off the shank I've got there, and what I want is maybe 3 turns of this. And the idea is that although I don't want a full shuck on the emerging pattern, I do want a hint of what might be a shuck, a suggestive element if you like. Ooh, just catch that wee bit in there. So I'll bring that down to where I let my thread finish, and I don't know how well you can see it on the camera, but it just gives a nice little shimmer there at the butt section. And I'm going to come in and I want to leave that at about 1 centimetre. Next I've got a dun cape here, and I've selected a feather from the top. And while I was about it, I selected a feather from around the middle, which is going to be my hackle for this fly. But let's go to the feather that I've got from the top here. What I want to do is remove the soft feathers from the bottom and just pick out maybe 6 to 10 fibres, and I'm going to bring that in over the top of my shuck and catch that in. You can just leave it and catch it all in. Doesn't make any difference really with this fly, because when we bring the body material up, it'll hide a multitude of sins. So before I go for my dubbing, what I want to do is add a rib to this fly, and what I'm using is from Troutline, and this is the super long stripped Peacock Herls. Now I've already taken one out of the packet, which I've got here. Now I don't want this fluffy bit at the top end, so I'll just take that away with my scissors, and then I'm going to make sure I get the right side. I want the black to come up first, and catch that in at the bottom here. Okay, so I've got that. I'm going to use that like a rib. Now it's not the most robust of materials, so I'll show you a little trick about that in a sec. Now for the body material, I'm coming back to the CDC dubbing that I used last week in the nymph, and I really like this stuff. It traps in lots of bubbles into the fly, but obviously on an emerging pattern it does aid the fly for floating if you get enough gink on it. It'll help keep the fly up. Although the Hackle and the Snowshoe at the front end tends to do that very well. So I'm just dubbing that on, fairly hard, not too hard. I want some of the fibres to just stick out a little. So I'm going to bring that around my body, and as I get near the top, I just want to taper up my body a little. Now, I'm just going to grab my tweezers. I don't want to have too long a length. Now, the little tip I was going to show you with the Herl here is, before I bring it up, I'm just going to coat my Herl with a little bit of glue. Now, it's not the most robust fly in the world, but this will give it some chance of surviving 2 or 3 fish. And you know, if you can get 2 or 3 fish out of a fly, it's certainly been worth your time sitting down and tying it, in my humble opinion. It depends on how Scottish you are, I suppose. You know, if you're really Scottish, a fly should last you the rest of your life. But I'm really adept at putting them in trees, bushes, so flies don't tend to last me too long. So I'm bringing that rib up, and as I get to the top, I can catch that in like so. Okie dokie. So far so good. Then I can remove my excess. Next then, what I'm going to do is put in my first wing, and I'm going to be using some Snowshoe. Fantastic material this, and I love it for mayfly patterns because it just it has that creamy colour to it, the natural. And what I want to do is just take, I'm going to do this off camera, I want to come in. Now when you take it as a big clump, you'll see there's a lot of bulk at the back here, but don't be worried, because once you get your fingers in there, and if you've got a comb handy, you'll take out quite a lot of that bulk from the back end of it. Don't throw this away, because we're going to use that as our dubbing later. So I'm just turning this round in my fingers, and what I want is for this to protrude past the point, approximately 1 centimetre. So I'm going to get that in a couple of loose turns, have a look, see how it's lying at the back, looks okay. And then what I'm going to do is clamp down onto that. Just be careful as you're coming up to the front of the hook, you don't want to cloak the eye too much, and then get a couple of turns in behind. So that looks not too bad so far. Now I don't want all this at the back, so I'm going to come in with my scissors, and I want to leave approximately 1/8 of an inch, like so. Next then, again, I'm going to use my done Hackle. I've already selected a feather from around the middle, and I've prepared that by just stripping away the waste and leaving myself a tag end. Then I can lay that up like so and capture that in. Now the bit of Snowshoe that I removed earlier I've got here, and I'm going to use that as a little bit of dubbing, fairly tightly packed onto the thread, and that's going to be a bed for my Hackle to lie on. Plus it gives the fly that finished sort of look. Now before I come back to that, I'm going to lift up my Snowshoe at the front, get a little bit in front there, so I cock that snowshoe up, and then I'm going to come back in behind it. Next then, I can grab my hackle, and I want to get not touching turns, but quite close together. And I'm wishing I'd picked my hackle pliers up now. You know, even though this feather's quite long, I just find I've got more control with it. I don't know why I didn't pick my hackle pliers up actually. Instant regret, but never mind, we're halfway there. So I'm just going to catch that feather in. 2 or 3 turns. And what I'm going to do is slick everything back now. Bring my thread to the front of the hook. Then I can come in with my scissors and just remove that hackle. Now at this point, I'm going to add a little super glue to my silk, and this just stops me having to wrestle the snowshoe out of the way and add a bit of super glue when I'm finished, because it is quite busy and fibrey at the front here. 2 or 3 turns, hold that into place. Now we're not quite finished, so don't go yet. What we want to do is leave a kind of flat profile at the bottom here. So what I like to do is just come in with my scissors and just remove that. You want it to sit on the water with the butt section obviously in the water itself, and then you treat the top section here with a hackle and the snowshoe with gink or whatever. Now because it's got the bright white, you can see it on the water very easily, and it's a great fly if you're short-sighted like I am, and you can pick this out on the water very quickly. So there we go, Mayfly emerger. Next week will be the dry. So thanks very much for watching. If you're a returning subscriber, it's nice to see you again, and if you're new to the channel, please don't forget to click the subscribe button, and I'll see you all next time.